Hi everyone.
Hello, ma'am.
Hi.
Hello, ma'am.
Good afternoon, everybody. So I hope you all have completed your homework. So there are two things that I asked yesterday. One was shared delusional disorder, and one was about feelings and emotions. And I also asked what is the other name for shared delusional disorder. Would somebody like to put a message in the chat window and tell what is shared delusional disorder? Is my voice audible now? Yeah, okay, thank you. Yeah, Param, that's correct. Param, would you like to tell us about, I'm going to unmute you. Could you please tell us about polyadu and shared delusional disorder? I know yesterday you were very correct in pointing out that shared delusional disorder was, um, what I was talking to was the case in Delhi. So could you please tell about that? Okay, Param, please go ahead.
Basically, shared delusional disorder is characterized where there is a primary patient who has the delusional belief in a very systematized network. From there, there is a secondary person who gets the delusions because they are in a close relationship to each other. And as a result, this systematized network, the primary person gets transferred to the secondary person or to another family member. So it may be seen that in the case that you were describing of the patient whom you found in the hospital, they had a family, and there everybody, including the wife and the children, had this delusion that somebody will kill. It is basically from the patient that you had and
Yeah, you're correct. Correct. Very correct.
this is it,
But
and it is also called a Foliar Dukes. And in Delhi, this happened that everybody believed, I'm not very sure of the case, but I believed it was that in Delhi, there was this family of 12 to 13 people, I guess. And everybody started having this shared delusion. And then there was a very mass suicide that they committed because I think they believe that somebody will harm them. So before others can harm them, they themselves harm themselves.
does anyone know the name of the family? What happened in that family? Very nice, Param. Thank you for sharing with us. There was another question. Polyadu, everybody got it right. Now I think Punya is here. Yeah, Punya is here. Punya, why don't you start with the presentation for today, the cognitive testing? Yeah, go ahead, Punya.
So our today's topic is in continuation, that is MSc. In last 2 days, you have studied MSc, the topics under MSc. The last topic is cognition under MSc. Now, what is cognition? Cognition refers to the mental processes involved in gaining knowledge or experience. These processes might include thinking, knowledge, remembering, judging, or problem solving. Hello? Is
You're
it
audible.
okay now?
Yeah, yeah.
Cognition is one of the important area to be assessed in mental status examination. A significant disturbance in cognitive function of a patient or a client which is coming to us commonly indicates the presence of any psychiatric illness or disorder. The areas to be covered under the assessment of cognition are abstract thinking, second, orientation, third, attention and concentration, fourth, memory, fifth, constructional ability, sixth, information and intelligence, sixth, judgment, seventh, judgment, and eighth is insight. Now we are going to see what comes under which category. First is abstract thinking. In common man term, the abstract thinking is the ability to think about objects or principles and the ideas that are not physically present in front of us. It is related to symbolic thinking, which uses the substitution of a symbol for an object or idea. Basically, abstract thinking means the flexible thinking. In psychological terms, abstract thinking is characterized by 3 points. First is shifting voluntarily from one aspect to another. Second, keeping in mind various aspects of a particular situation. And third, to break the whole in the parts. Now, to assess the abstract thinking of the patient or the client, we have to follow certain tests. We can perform certain tests on the person to assess the abstract thinking. What are these tests? The first is proverb testing. In this, we can ask the patient or the client to produce the meaning of the proverbs we give to him or her. Usually, we give three proverbs. It can be in any language: English, Hindi, or Punjabi, like all that glitters is not gold, or Ucha, Uchi Dukan, Fika Pakwan, or it might be Ulta Chor, Kotwal ko Dante. Second, similarities and differences between the familiar objects. In this, we can ask the client or the patient to produce the similarities, some points of similarities and differences in, in a particular object, like table and chair, banana and orange, or differences between stone, potato, like this. Third is conceptual series completion. We have to ask the client to complete the series given. We can give the series of alphabets, numbers, or it can be of shapes also. The person have to complete the series. We must remember that any concrete response or the absence of abstract response by the client suggests that there is an impairment in the abstract ability of the person or the client. Second area in cognition is orientation. What is orientation? It is the ability to interpret or interpret the imminent or the upcoming environment. There are three types of orientation to be assessed. First, orientation of time, which consists of day, date, month, and year. Second, orientation of place, which consists building, city, floor, the person or the patient is present, and the orientation of person. In this, we can consist of the accompanying person or the relative of the client. Uh, Generally, the orientation to time is the first function lost, and it usually indicates the early brain damage. Orientation of place is the next, and the losing of orientation of person is the last and indicates the highest severity of brain damage. Next is attention and concentration. What is attention? Attention is the ability to attend to a specific stimulus without being distracted by any other stimuli. For example, in a class, students, there are many voices or sounds coming in the class, but the student only pays attention to the sound or the voice of the teacher. It means that the student attends what is important to them. So, in clinical setting, the test we can use to test attention is the digit repetition test. We can ask the patient to repeat the digits given by us. For example, we can take 2, 7. Now we can ask the patient to produce the same digits we have said. This is forward repetition. Now we can say to the client or the patient that you have to say the digits backward, like I have said 5, 4. Now he have to produce the digits backwards, that is 4, 5. Remember, a person with the average intelligence can produce 5 to 6 digits forward and 3 to 4 digits backwards. Now, concentration. What is concentration? It is the ability to sustain attention over an extended period of time. The test to study concentration of a person is we can ask the client or the patient to tap the table whenever he or she listens to the sound. Like we can we can produce certain alphabets for him, and whenever he listen to the sound of A or any alphabet you can choose, he or she has to tap on the table. Now, remember, whenever the client or the patient, um, when there is a failure of the target letter being presented, like when he has failed in the indication of the target letter, or he produces the sound on any other letter except the target letter, then we can say that there is the impaired concentration in the client or the patient. Now we have studied about attention. Is it clear now? My voice is clear. Is it clear now, Nandini? Hello.
Yes, it is clear.
Okay. Now we have three types of attention. First is selective attention. Second is divided attention. Concentration, basically it is the ability to sustain attention over a long period of time. The test for concentration is we can ask the client to tap the table whenever he or she listen to the particular sound, like we can give him certain alphabets, and whenever he listens to particular sound like A, B or C, any alphabet you can choose, whenever he listens to that particular sound, or she has to tap the table. Whenever if there is a failure in tapping the table on that sound, or if he do not if he tap the table on any other alphabet except the target alphabet, that means there is the impaired concentration. There are types of attention we were talking about. First was selective attention, second divided attention, third sustained attention. The example that I gave before of the class, that in a class there are several sounds coming, and the students select to the sound they have to attend, that is the teacher's voice. This is the example of selective attention. They ignore any other sound, and the most important sound for them at that time is the teacher's voice, so they select to attend to that. Second is divided attention. The common example for divided attention is the ladies or the women come that are who work in our house, like our mothers or sisters. They have divided attention in the kitchen, like they have the attention on the milk also that is boiling, and the vegetables also they are cooking. So they have divided attention. They are concentrating on more than one activity at a time. Yes, like a multitasker. Yes. Third is sustained attention. It is maintaining a focus on selected stimulus over a prolonged period. It can be also known as vigilance, that you are maintaining your focus on a particular stimulus for a long period of time. The next area to be assessed under cognition is memory. Now, what is memory? It is a process where whatever is learned by an individual is recorded or stored in central nervous system. Clinically, memory is divided in three types based on the time span between stimulus presentation and memory retrieved. There are three types of memory. First is immediate memory recall. Second is recent memory. Third is remote memory. We can test the patient or the three types of memory. First is immediate memory. It is the reproduction of the perceived material within few seconds after the presentation of the stimulus. Hello, Bhavneet, it's clear now? Immediate memory, I'm repeating it again. It is a reproduction or the recall of perceived material within few seconds of the presentation. We have presented the stimulus after few seconds. Okay. When we have presented the stimulus after few seconds, when we ask the patient to recall, it is known as immediate memory recall. Hello, is it clear now? In this we can take the example of digit repetition again. Okay. In this we can take the example of digit repetition again, forward and backward. The patient should be asked the patient should be asked to repeat the digits or to produce the digits forward and backward. Second is recent memory. It is the recall of events over past 2 days, that is 24 hours. In this, we can ask the patient to recall and or describe some events that have happened with him in past 24 hours. Like we can ask him, where do you live? What have you had in your breakfast today? Or how did you come here, the mode of transport, like this. Third is the remote memory, which are the past experiences, which refers to the collection of facts or events that has happened in the past of the person's life. Like we can ask about his job, his birthplace, his schooling, any historical event that has happened in client's life. If the client is able to produce these, that means they have the intact memory. Otherwise, if they are not able to produce, this means they have the impaired memory. The next area to be assessed is constructional ability. It is the capacity to draw 2 to 3 dimensional figures. Now, as you can see, the shapes to be given are a cross and a cube. Some of the abnormalities to be seen are: first is the example of rotation. The shape drawn is rotated. And second is the example of preservation. Next is information and intelligence. What is intelligence? Intelligence, as we've studied in +1 and +2 also, the best definition. Intelligence is the ability to think logically and act rationally. In clinical terms, intelligence is an umbrella term, and the areas to be assessed are: first, comprehension; second, vocabulary; third, counting; fourth, calculations; and fifth, general knowledge. In comprehension, as such, there are no tests available, but we can ask the patient certain questions. Does the patient know why he or she is here? Does the patient know the purpose of his examination? And does the patient know that he or she is ill? Second is vocabulary. The vocabulary is assessed according to the grade and school level of the patient. Third, counting. We can ask the patient to do any operation, mathematics operation like addition, subtraction, multiplication, etc. In calculations, we can give the person or the patient different problem sums of different operations to solve. Like for example, uh, 1 kg of potato is of rupees 18. You have to buy 2 kgs of potatoes and you give the cashier a 100 rupee note. How many money will you get back? Such questions you can ask under calculations. Next is general knowledge. General knowledge, uh, in general knowledge, we can ask the current information like the current prime minister or the president. Or we can also ask the 4 largest cities of India. Next comes the judgment. What is judgment? It is the ability to assess a situation or draw conclusions correctly and act appropriately in that particular situation. It reflects a complex mental functioning which involves social and ethical tendencies. There are different types of judgment. First is personal judgment, second is social judgment, and third is test judgment. In personal judgment, it is the ability for future plans in context of education, job, or any life situation of the patient. Like we can ask the patient where you can see yourself in next 4 years in the context of job. Second is social judgment. It is the ability for realistic explanation of social judgment is how the person or the patient behaves in a social setting. In this, we can check the person how he comes to the center or to the clinic, how he enters the room, how he sits. Does he sits by with his legs up on the table? Is it okay? Hello, is it okay, Bhavneet? Third is test judgment. In this, okay, types of judgment I'm explaining again. There are 3 types of judgment. First is personal judgment, second is social judgment, third is test judgment. In personal judgment, basically it is the ability for the future plan in the context of education, job, or any other life situation. Like we can ask the person or the patient coming to us that what are your like what where you can see yourself in next 2 to 3 years in the context of job. Which job is suitable for you? Second is social judgment. It is the ability for the realistic explanation of social events or social situation. Basically, social judgment is that how the person behaves in any social situation. In this, we can see how the person enters our clinic or the center, how the person enters a room, how the person sits. Is the person sitting with his legs up and looking here and there? Is the person's eye contact proper with the interviewer? How he reacts in the social situation, in any social situation. Third is test judgment. In test judgment, we give particular situation to the client or the patient to think upon and answer what the person will do in that situation. Generally, mostly we ask these two situations to the patient. First is, what will you do if you see the fire in your neighborhood? And second, what will you do if you see a stamped letter with an address on it lying on the road or the street? What the person or the patient will do in these two situations. This comes under test judgment. The last, yes, fidgeting is also observed under social judgment. Insight, the last area to be assessed under cognition is insight. Insight is the degree of awareness and understanding that the person has regarding his illness. Insight is measured in the terms of patient's understanding of his or her own condition. Generally, we see the complete lack of insight in most psychiatric disorders. We can ask certain questions to assess insight of the patient. Like we can ask, do you know that you are ill? Or why have you come here in our clinic or center? There are levels of insight. Level 1 shows the complete denial of illness. Like the patient says, no, I'm totally fine. My parents have brought me here. I think I'm totally fine. And the level 6 is the complete awareness, intellectually and emotionally also, that the person knows that he is suffering from a problem and it can bring several behavioral issues in his future life. That's it. The Neeraj Ahuja, a short textbook of psychiatry by Neeraj Ahuja, is a book you can refer to for MSc.
Thank you, Punya. Thank you for this wonderful presentation. Could you please go to slide number 13 again and keep sharing the screen? I want to talk more about insight. So I hope everyone was paying a lot of attention to all the topics covered. The last 5 minutes that we have in this meeting, I'm just going to talk about insight a little bit, and then when we meet in the next meeting, I have another presentation that I will be elaborating on certain terms that we have discussed in this PPT itself. And again, I will be taking up questions in the next meeting. Okay, so when we talk about the levels of insight, it is really interesting. One of the things that you will understand once we talk about types of disorders is that there is a key difference between psychotic disorders and neurotic disorders. So the categorization of psychotic and neurotic can be based upon the fact that in psychotic disorders, generally the insight is completely absent. The patient who has psychosis or is suffering from schizophrenia will have absence of insight. They will not know that they are suffering from a problem. For example, they might have very poor self-care. They might not have taken baths for 15-20 days together. They might be collecting old newspapers in their room, and because of fear and because of suspiciousness, they might not be allowing anybody to come into their room and not going out of the house. But if you ask them what is their problem or what has gone wrong, they will defend themselves and say, yeah, mujhe kuch nahi hua, I'm fine, I don't have a problem. Okay, so another example of denial of illness is also in patients who have addiction disorders. For example, patient who has alcohol addiction, or even these days patients who have internet addiction. When you ask them that, do you think this this usage of substance in form of alcohol, or this excessive usage of internet or video games, do you think it is a problem? They would say, nahi, problem thode na hai, ye to main apni marzi se kar raha hu, main jab chahun chhod sakta hu. But in reality, what happens is that they meet the criteria for addiction disorders, and they have impaired control, tolerance, they have craving, and really they cannot find pleasure in any other activity but the substance that they are addicted to, or the internet that they are addicted to. For example, if they are addicted to alcohol or heroin or internet, they will be happy or they will be comfortable only when they are doing what they like, playing or using the substance, but they will not engage with the family, they will not appear happy, they will all the time have that craving, talab lagti rahegi sara time. But you ask them, do you think you have a problem, they will have a complete denial of illness. But that's not actually true in all of the disorders, especially neurotic disorders. Some patients are able to say कि डॉक्टर साहब कुछ तो गड़बड़ है, मुझे ये समझ नहीं आ रहा है कि क्या है. So that can be level 2. Third is aware. हाँ मुझे पता है मुझे प्रॉब्लम है, but sometimes patients come to us and say कि हाँ मुझे बीमारी है, पर ये तो मेरे पेट में गैस का गोला बनता है ना, उसकी वजह से मेरे दिमाग में स्ट्रेस रहता है. Fourth is, हाँ मुझे मालूम है, I do think I have low mood, but I don't know ऐसा हो क्यों रहा है. Intellectual insight, my mood is remaining sad most of the times. Complete awareness, intellectual and emotional. I am a short-tempered person. I don't know how to handle situations very well. So whenever there is a dialogue or whenever there is a problem in the house, I sort of react badly, and then people start fighting, and I can't take that fight, and I keep thinking and overthinking about it, which is my problem. Because of this overthinking, I'm generally sad most of the time. So yes, my depression is because of my personality traits. So you see, there is complete awareness of intellectual awareness as well as emotional awareness. The person is able to attribute what is exactly going on. One key point that we have to understand here is that insight is generally a dividing factor between the psychotic and the neurotic illnesses, and assessment of insight requires a lot of skill. However, people who are very passionate about psychiatry, this 6th grade insight is not actually present in CTP, Comprehensive Textbook of Psychiatry. I've mentioned this book a couple of times. It's like the Bible for psychiatry. For people who want to read more, they should understand that this categorization of 6 levels of insight is not present in CTP. It is present in other books, and it is very, very helpful when you really want to understand. What is also interesting to note is that as the patient starts recovering, their level starts increasing. From complete denial of illness, once you start them on treatment, they start becoming more and more and more aware. So person who has a delusional disorder might not acknowledge that they have a problem at all, but you start them on medication, they start becoming slightly aware of it. Ho sakta hai. So delusion starts changing into overvalued ideas, then to beliefs, then to eventually understanding that, okay, I was suffering from a problem. I guess that's about it. A few last seconds are left. We keep your questions ready so that we can meet up again in the next class. I have a few interesting concepts to elaborate on what Punya has talked right now. I hope you're having fun learning all of this. I'll be sharing a couple of resources and the names of the books that you can refer to for more learning. I guess that's about it. So I think we can end the meeting now and meet at 12:50. Okay. Bye-bye.